It was a love story that seemed scripted by Hollywood itself, the kind you see in movies, the kind everyone hopes for. Liam Hayes was a young man with a bright future, a steady hand, and a heart just full of devotion. His world, it seemed, revolved around one person, Olivia Sterling. She was vibrant, with a laugh that could fill a room and eyes that held a universe of dreams. They met in a small town, you know, the kind where everyone knows your name, and their connection was immediate, electric. It was a romance that blossomed under the warm summer sun, a courtship filled with stolen glances, long walks by the lake, and whispered promises of a forever that felt not just possible, but inevitable. Their love was the town's favorite story. Their engagement was no surprise to anyone. Liam proposed on a crisp autumn evening, under a canopy of stars with a ring that had belonged to his grandmother. It was a moment etched in perfection. Olivia's tearful yes was the sound of two lives locking into place, ready to begin their shared journey. The wedding planning began almost immediately, a whirlwind of excitement and joy. Venues were scouted, dresses were tried on, and invitations were sent. The date was set for a beautiful day in early September, a day that was supposed to mark the beginning of their happily ever after. To their friends and family, Liam and Olivia were more than just a couple. They were a symbol of what love could be, pure, simple, and true. Liam's family adored Olivia. His mother, Carol, treated her like the daughter she never had, helping her with every minute detail of the wedding preparations. But it was Liam's father, Richard Hayes, who seemed especially taken with his future daughter-in-law. Richard was a pillar of the community, a successful businessman with a commanding presence and a charismatic charm that could win over anyone. He was proud of his son, and he seemed overjoyed that Liam had found such a wonderful partner. He would often join Liam and Olivia for dinner, his booming laughter adding to the cheerful atmosphere, always ready with a toast to the happy couple and their bright future. He was the patriarch, the steady rock upon which the family was built. And so the days ticked by, each one bringing them closer to the moment they would stand before their loved ones and pledge their lives to each other. The air was thick with anticipation, a sweet perfume of hope and happiness. No one, least of all Liam, could have imagined the darkness that was lurking just beneath the surface of this idyllic picture. No one could have foreseen that the foundation of their perfect world was built not on love and trust, but on a devastating secret. A secret that, once revealed, would not just shatter a dream, but destroy lives in a way no one thought possible. The perfect love story was about to become a perfect nightmare. It started subtly, a change in Olivia, a whisper of something unspoken. A few weeks before the wedding, she announced the news they had been dreaming of. She was pregnant. Liam was ecstatic, his joy overflowing. He was going to be a husband and a father all at once. His life felt complete, a perfect circle of happiness. He held Olivia, imagining their future, their child, their home. The news added another layer of celebration to the upcoming nuptials. Now, they weren't just starting a life together, they were starting a family. But even in his bliss, Liam noticed a shadow in Olivia's eyes, a flicker of something he couldn't name. Her smiles didn't quite reach them anymore. He chalked it up to pre-wedding jitters, the stress of planning, the hormones of early pregnancy. It made sense. He tried to be more attentive, more supportive, reassuring her that everything would be perfect. Yet the distance between them seemed to grow, an invisible wall rising brick by brick. Olivia became more withdrawn, her laughter less frequent. She would often be lost in thought, her gaze distant, as if she were a million miles away. When Liam would ask what was wrong, she would just shake her head, forcing a smile and saying it was nothing, just tired. But it wasn't just tiredness. It was the heavy weight of a secret that was growing inside her, both literally and figuratively. The secret had a name, and that name was Richard, the father of her fiancé. It had happened a few months prior, a moment of weakness, a terrible mistake fueled by a complicated mix of emotions and perhaps too much wine. Richard, with his easy charm and worldly confidence, had offered a listening ear one evening when Olivia was feeling overwhelmed and alone. Liam was away on a business trip. One conversation led to another, sympathy turned into something else, and a line was crossed that could never be uncrossed. It was a single, regrettable night, a catastrophic lapse in judgment that both had sworn to take to their graves, a secret buried deep. But secrets have a way of refusing to stay buried, and this one was now making itself known in the most undeniable way possible. The baby, the one Liam thought was a symbol of their love, was not his. It was his father's. Olivia was trapped in a nightmare of her own making. Every loving touch from Liam was a stab of guilt. Every congratulatory word from friends and family was a twist of the knife. How could she tell him? How could she confess a betrayal so profound it would not only end their love story, but would detonate the very core of his family? The silence was deafening, and with each passing day, the truth grew more impossible to contain. The wedding was approaching, a ticking clock counting down to devastation. The first crack in the facade appeared unexpectedly. It was a misplaced phone. Olivia had left hers on the kitchen counter, and a message lit up the screen. Liam, passing by, glanced at it innocently. The message was from his father, Richard. The words were simple, but they landed like a punch to the gut. "We need to talk about this. We can't let him find out." "Find out what?" A cold dread washed over Liam. It was a strange message from a father to his son's fiancé. He tried to dismiss it, to rationalize it. Maybe it was about a surprise wedding gift. Maybe it was about some business matter. But the seed of suspicion had been planted, and it was a stubborn, thorny thing. Liam couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. He started watching them, his father, his fiancé. He noticed the way they avoided each other's gaze, the strained, almost panicked look in Olivia's eyes whenever Richard entered a room, the way his father's jovial demeanor seemed forced, brittle. The easy rapport they once shared was gone, replaced by a palpable tension that charged the air. Liam replayed the message in his mind over and over. We can't let him find out. Him. That was Liam. What was this secret they were so desperate to keep from him? He felt a knot of ice form in his stomach. The world he knew, the people he trusted most, were becoming strangers before his very eyes. The confrontation was quiet, not explosive, at first. Liam approached Olivia one evening, his heart pounding in his chest. He asked her about the message. He asked her why she seemed so distant, so sad. He pleaded with her to tell him the truth, promising he could handle it, whatever it was. At first she denied everything, her voice trembling. But under his gentle, persistent questioning, her composure shattered. The dam of lies and guilt finally broke, and the truth came flooding out in a torrent of sobs and confessions. She told him everything, the night with his father, the regret, and the final devastating blow. The baby, their baby, was not his. The world stopped. The air left Liam's lungs. Betrayal is a simple word, but it cannot capture the seismic shock, the complete annihilation of one's reality. It wasn't just a cheating fiancé. It was his father, the man who raised him, the man he looked up to, the man who was supposed to be his best man. The two people he loved and trusted most in the world had conspired in the ultimate deception. The heartbreak was absolute, a physical pain that radiated from his chest. Anger, white-hot and blinding, followed close behind. The love story was over. The family was a lie. And in its place was a crater of pain and a thirst for a reckoning that felt as necessary as breathing. In the aftermath of the confession, a strange and chilling calm settled over the house. Liam did not call off the wedding. He did not scream or rage or throw things. He simply retreated into himself, a cold, silent fury building within him. To the outside world, the wedding was still on. The caterers were confirmed. The flowers were ordered. The guests were preparing to travel. Carol, his mother, blissfully unaware of the poison that had infected her family, continued her excited chatter about the big day. She noticed Liam's quiet mood, but attributed it to the normal anxieties of a groom-to-be. How could she possibly imagine the truth? How could she know her husband and her future daughter-in-law had shattered her son's heart? Olivia, meanwhile, existed in a state of suspended terror. She had confessed, and instead of the explosion she expected, there was only this terrifying silence from Liam. She didn't know what it meant. Was he processing? Was he planning to forgive her? Or was he planning something else entirely? She offered to leave, to call everything off, to disappear from his life forever. But Liam was firm. The wedding would proceed as planned. His voice was flat, devoid of all the warmth it once held. His instructions were a command, not a request. And so, Olivia was trapped. A prisoner in the final days leading up to what was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. Richard Hayes also sensed the shift in the atmosphere. He knew Olivia had been fragile, on the verge of breaking. He saw the cold, hard look in his son's eyes. The easy conversations between father and son ceased. They were replaced by clipped, monosyllabic exchanges. Richard tried to approach Liam to gauge his mood, but his son was a fortress, impenetrable. Did he know? The question haunted Richard. He had risked everything for a moment of inexcusable weakness, and now the consequences were closing in. He too felt the pull of the inevitable, the sense that they were all marching toward a day of reckoning from which there would be no escape. The wedding day loomed, not as a celebration, but as a deadline. And so the final preparations were made in an atmosphere thick with unspoken truths and simmering rage. Liam moved like a ghost through the proceedings, his eyes holding a darkness that no one dared to question. He was playing a part, the happy groom, but it was a chilling performance. He was a man hollowed out by betrayal, his grief curdling into something harder, something colder. The wedding was no longer a celebration of love. It was a stage that Liam himself was setting. A stage for a final act where secrets would be laid bare and a price would be paid. The walk to the altar was going to be the longest, most treacherous walk of their lives. The day arrived, September 7th, 2025. It was a picture-perfect day, the sun shining brightly in a clear blue sky, a gentle breeze rustling the leaves. The church was breathtaking, adorned with white roses and lilies, the air filled with their sweet fragrance. Guests began to arrive, their faces beaming with joy and anticipation, their light-hearted chatter filling the sacred space. They were all there to witness the union of Liam and Olivia, the town's golden couple. They saw the beautiful decorations, they heard the soft prelude from the organ, but they could not feel the icy undercurrent of dread that flowed beneath it all. They were oblivious spectators at the prelude to a tragedy. At the front of the church, Richard Hayes stood in his place as the best man. He looked distinguished in his tuxedo, a smile fixed on his face, but his eyes darted nervously towards the door. He had tried to speak to Liam that morning, but his son had brushed past him, his gaze like chips of ice. The silence was more menacing than any accusation. Richard's heart hammered against his ribs. He was a man standing on a precipice, waiting for the ground to give way. He looked out at the expectant faces, at his wife Carol in the front pew, her eyes shining with pride, and the weight of his deceit felt crushing. He was a fraud, a patriarch who had poisoned his own bloodline. Then, the music swelled. The doors at the back of the church opened. Olivia appeared, a vision in white, on the arm of her father. A collective gasp of admiration rippled through the guests. She was beautiful, but her beauty was that of a tragic heroine. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with a fear that was mistaken by many for bridal nerves. Every step down that long aisle was an eternity. Her gaze was locked on Liam, who stood waiting at the altar. He watched her approach, his expression unreadable, a marble statue of a groom. He was not looking at his bride. He was looking at a stranger, a co-conspirator in the crime that had stolen his future. She reached the altar. Her father placed her hand in Liam's. It was cold, trembling. The minister began to speak, the familiar words of love, honor, and fidelity echoing through the silent church. The words were a mockery, a cruel joke. Liam let the minister speak, letting the tension build, letting the lies hang in the sacred air. He waited for the perfect moment, the moment of no return. The minister turned to him. "Do you, Liam, take Olivia to be your lawfully wedded wife?" The church held its breath. Liam looked at Olivia, then his gaze shifted slowly, deliberately to the man standing beside him, his father. And then he spoke, his voice clear and cold, cutting through the silence. "No, but maybe you should ask my father. He seems to be the one she's really committed to." Chaos erupted. The guests gasped, a wave of confusion and shock washing over the pews. Whispers turned to frantic murmurs. Carol Hayes, Liam's mother, looked from her son to her husband, her face a mask of utter bewilderment. Olivia began to sob, her hands flying to her face as the carefully constructed charade crumbled around her. But Liam's focus was singular. His eyes were locked on Richard, who had frozen, the color draining from his face. The public accusation, the sheer audacity of it, had left him speechless. All the charm, all the confidence was stripped away, leaving only a guilty man exposed before the world. "What are you talking about, son?" Richard stammered, his voice barely a whisper. "Don't call me son," Liam snarled, his voice low and dangerous. The cold calm he had maintained for days was cracking, revealing the white-hot rage beneath. "You want to know what I'm talking about? I'm talking about the baby, the one she's carrying, your grandchild." He paused, letting the words sink in, twisting the knife. "Or should I say, your child?" A collective gasp, sharper this time, filled the church. Carol let out a small, wounded cry, her hand going to her heart as the horrifying truth dawned on her. The betrayal was no longer a secret. It was a public spectacle, a grenade detonated in the heart of a family, its shrapnel tearing through everyone present. The day of celebration had become a public trial. Richard, cornered and exposed, tried to grab Liam's arm to pull him aside, to contain the disaster. "Liam, not here. We can talk about this." But Liam was beyond talking. He shoved his father's hand away with a force that sent Richard stumbling back. The confrontation spilled from the altar into the aisle, a vortex of rage and despair. Olivia, weeping, pleaded with them to stop, her cries lost in the escalating drama. The wedding had dissolved into a brutal, raw family implosion. The love, the respect, the history they shared, it was all burning to ash in the fire of Liam's fury. He saw only the two people who had destroyed his world, his father's guilty face and Olivia's tear-streaked one. In that moment, something inside Liam finally snapped. The grief, the pain, the humiliation, it all coalesced into a singular blinding impulse. He had come prepared for this moment. While everyone else was preparing for a wedding, he was preparing for a war. reaching into the inner pocket of his tuxedo jacket. His hand closed around the cold, hard steel of a small handgun he had hidden there. No one noticed at first, lost in the shouting and the crying. But then he raised it, his hand surprisingly steady. The final vow he would make that day was not one of love, but of vengeance. The horrified screams of the guests were the last sound before the deafening report of the gunshot echoed through the house of God. Richard Hayes fell to the floor. The aftermath was a scene from a nightmare. The pristine white runner on the aisle was stained with a growing pool of crimson. Richard Hayes lay motionless, his life extinguished in an instant by the son who once adored him. The scent of gunpowder mixed with the sweet fragrance of the wedding flowers, a sickening combination. Screams and panic replaced the joyful hymns. Guests scrambled for the exits, their minds struggling to process the horror they had just witnessed. Carol Hayes knelt beside her husband's body, her wails of grief a heartbreaking sound that cut through the chaos. Her son was a murderer. Her husband was dead. Her family was gone. In a single moment, she had lost everything. Liam did not run. He stood there, the gun hanging loosely in his hand, his face a blank mask of shock as if he himself couldn't believe what he had just done. The rage had subsided, leaving behind a vast, empty wasteland of despair. He looked at the devastation he had wrought. His father dead on the floor, his mother's life shattered, and Olivia, the woman he had loved, crumpled in a heap, her sobs shaking her entire body. She was now a widow to a man she never married, and carrying the child of the man her fiancé had just killed. There was no word for the complex tragedy she now embodied. The police arrived to a scene of profound sorrow, leading a silent, unresisting Liam away in handcuffs. The story became a cautionary tale, whispered in hushed tones throughout the small town and reported in sensational headlines across the country. The perfect love story had become a byword for betrayal and tragedy. It served as a grim reminder of how secrets, like a cancer, can grow in the dark, consuming everything good and pure until there is nothing left. The legal proceedings were a formality. Liam confessed to everything, his defense painting a picture of a man broken by an unimaginable betrayal, a crime of passion born from a shattered heart. But no legal verdict could undo the damage or bring back the lives that were lost or ruined. Years later, the echoes of that terrible day still linger. The church where it happened stands as a silent monument to the tragedy. Carol Hayes moved away, unable to remain in a town so full of ghosts. Olivia raised her child, a boy with his grandfather's eyes in quiet obscurity, forever marked by the scandal. And Liam sits in a prison cell, serving a life sentence, haunted by the faces of the two people he loved and the one he killed. There are no winners in a story like this. There is only loss. The loss of life, the loss of love, and the haunting, unending echo of what could have been on a perfect sunny day in September.